Hi everyone, I'm the Awkward Historian, and I want to thank you all for joining me on my journey to teach everyone and everything about the very beginnings of humankind and about history. Because the way I see it, history is basically just humankind's Twitter, and that's just fun to learn. So let's begin our journey in the Paleolithic Age, which is between 2.5 million years ago to 10,000 BC. That is a seriously long time. And I really want to give a shout out to whatever ancient animal or fish or whatever started coming onto land and started this whole journey in the first place. Seriously, you are a real one. Now, the Paleolithic age is so long, we've broken it down into three major eras. The Paleolithic age, which is better known as the Old Stone Age, which is characterized with people like learning how to walk basically, using stones to hunt and gathering little berries basically. Have the Mesolithic, which is also known as the Middle Stone Age. So this is going to be where we're doing more hunting and gathering, refining tools, and finally we have the Neolithic or the New Stone Age. Now during this time is when we're doing like more agriculture, we're domesticating wild animals, and we're herding those animals to make them work for us instead of us working to stay alive. Old Stone Age is characterized by people living in caves, huts, teepees. I really like this picture of this caveman here, especially because it kind of looks like he's kind of marking his cave, showing that he was there, or just giving it a little bit of customization. Even in old times, we loved to interior decorate. We were learning how to make stone tools during this time. So we were doing axes, spears, and knives, anyway, in order to stay alive and find our prey. Let's talk quickly about the environment in though. So Earth during the Paleolithic era was freezing. I mean, 46 degrees Fahrenheit freezing. That was cold, and that was the highest that we would get for a very long time. So, what do you do when you're cold? Well, you're gonna try to bundle up in any way you can to get warm. And that meant hunting large animals with lots and lots of fur. So the animals were bigger during this time, and I mean big. You have got to take a look at this woolly mammoth right here. This guy is huge. Look at him. Look at those tusks. This is not something you want to be within 20 miles of, let alone like right here with a spear, trying to live. But what can you do, honestly? Because, hey, you need fur, and that boy over there has a lot of it. Also, can we take a look at these little horses here? Because those are our ancient horses right there. And it's a bison, or a yak, one of the two. Still looks pretty cool, though. Hunting these large animals could be deadly. We would have needed tribes people, we would have needed manpower, we would have needed coordination, and we would have needed a lot of spears, and I imagine divine intervention to take down these animals. But the risk was very much worth the reward, because this mammoth right here could probably provide food for weeks for a tribe. It could provide fur to keep everyone warm. The bones could be used to make more weapons. We can use it to make shelters that we would all need. So this is an example of when it's high risk, high reward. And apparently it worked. Naturally, though, things do tend to change during these times, and the climate was no different. While I do want to think that the never-ending search for lunch was probably the reason why we were moving from Africa, it is also quite possible that the change in climate was also pushing our species close to extinction, so we had no choice but to look for a better environment. So our travel from Mother Africa to the crescent in the south, in the middle. Let's take a quick look at agriculture though, because it does have some advantages and some major disadvantages that we are definitely gonna need to talk about. Advantage. One advantage was that we were now able to hunt smaller, less difficult, and faster prey. So rabbits are definitely fast. Squirrels are definitely fast. Monkeys and birds can get away from people really, really fast. But thankfully, though, we were able to supplement our missing diet with different materials like berries, grains that we were able to farm. So, being an omnivore does have its advantages. Disadvantage, though, we were closer to human and animal waste. So, we need to bear in mind that when we were traveling nomads, we would just go anywhere we wanted and then leave. We didn't really have to deal with plumbing during that time. So when we started settling down into more permanent settlements, we had a problem that we never thought about before, which is how do you deal with poop, basically. And we had some theories, some better than others, but those are going to be for series for another time. Advantage, fishing. Fishing is infinitely less likely to kill you and a lot easier to do. We would just need some nets, put that net into the water, and let the food come to you, basically. Disadvantage. More risk of zoonotic disease. For anyone who still remembers and anyone who was paying attention to anything for the past 2 years, It any kind of zoonotic disease in the human population can be devastating. And during the Paleolithic era is when we started becoming more susceptible to those zoonotic diseases. During the Upper Paleolithic era is when we were domesticating animals, bringing animals like wolves and old cats with us that would carry those diseases with us. We would also domesticate like llamas and horses and ancient cows during the time, which was a big advantage to us because we now had those animals close by. So they were easier to slaughter, but we also had their diseases to contend with. Advantage, establishing permanent seaside and riverside settlements. If you look in any kind of ancient map of the world, you're going to notice that civilizations like Mesopotamia or the Indus River Valley or ancient Egypt were all beginning in river settlements. And that's really no coincidence because being by a river meant having easily accessible water. It meant having fishing places. It meant having a natural highway for us to travel with. So it's no surprise that we loved rivers. Disadvantage. Arguably, we were probably working harder to get our food because farming is a very labor-intensive process. We would have to find good land, we would have to till the soil, move it up, get the nutrients into the soil that it needed. Then we would need to plant seeds, we would need to tend to those seeds, we would need to weed the land that it was around so it wouldn't take nutrients from the crops. We would need to protect those crops from predators like mice or birds that would want to eat those crops besides us. There was even a danger that we would even lose the crop due to natural reasons like diseases or droughts or floods or whatever. So it was really, really hard to farm. Everyone needs to give a major hands up to all the farmers out there that give us groceries. Important developments during the Paleolithic Age. So let's give just like a big, very biased shout out to this person over here that's weaving clothes from a loom. That is technology that it will be forever, be around for a literal lifetime and beyond. So we were developing small communities during the Paleolithic era. Around this time, the human population was expanding, so that meant more competition for food and for resources, and an increased need for cooperation. So, what we would do is we would divide up the labor and specialization. That way, one person can deal with the hunting, for example, and another person would deal with food production. So, I made these little bubbles here on this picture so we can take a look at what was going on here. So, we have here hunting, that's a specialization. Here we would have construction of materials like huts and shelters. And here we would have both food production, like preparing food, and we would also have child rearing. The future generation needs to know how to survive, and what better way to learn than to actually see it being done. We're not going to talk about this guy here just yet, mostly because he's more towards the end and he's just a lot more fun. We developed tools during this time. Remember how earlier I was talking about stone tools being used to take down mammoths? Well, during this whole Paleolithic era is when we were learning to make different tools and even improving on some of our older tools. So we were able to make spears and harpoons for fishing and needles to make warmer clothing for ourselves. And huge advancement happened when we were able to control and tame fire. So having fire was a major advancement for us as a species. We were able to stay warm during the nighttime. We were able to cook food, making it more nutritious for us, making it safer to eat, because it is dangerous to be eating raw food like that. We were even able to keep predators away during the nighttime or even during the daytime. So it was huge for us. That cannot be overstated. I am going to give a major round of applause to whoever it was who not only discovered and tamed fire for the first time, but was able to tell about it in whatever language they were speaking. However, whoever it is probably also learned fire hot. Fun fact though, we found pieces of burnt wood in Israel and China that dated back to 790,000 to 4,000 years ago. We have been burning fire for so. So I'm a little biased on this one, but art appears during the Paleolithic era. So humans have always wanted to represent the world around us, and we would do so through drawings of animals, like the ones over here, over in the Chauvet caves in France. I probably said that horribly wrong. We would even make representations of ourselves, kind of like we were saying, "Hey, I'm here." With handprints. This handprint, believe it or not, came from someone who is millions and millions of years old. This person, who we may never know, existed. And we had undeniable proof of that now. These little shells over here were probably the funnest part of my research because these are called the Nautilus snail shells, and they're found over in France. I think it's in like the southern France, something around there. But they've been around since the Paleolithic Age. And what's fun is that at some point, some cave person was looking at this snail and thought, your shell is super pretty. It's mine now. Poor little snail. This one was probably the coolest part of the research, is discovering that Paleolithic man had religion and had complex abstract thoughts. So naturally, all of us will mourn our dead at some point, and our ancient ancestors were no different. They would bury their dead inside of small little holes. And I kind of like to imagine that they would just very carefully find a spot for their loved one, bury them with grave goods, and then stay for a little while, tell stories before they moved on, leaving their now ancestor, leaving their now ancestor to travel to their afterlife. What's really interesting is that our oldest burial came from 78,000 years ago when we found a burial site of a small child in Kenya. Poor little guy, but his contribution to the story of mankind will make him. The last part has to be the Venus figures. These were the best part to learn, and probably how I got into a massive rabbit hole for a couple of days. But they generally date to around 40,000 to 10,000 BC. So they're at the tail end of the upper Paleolithic era. So fun. And there are so many theories about these women. So we think they might have been religious icons or they might have been protective amulets, since some of them do have holes that would go through the figure. We also think they might have been dolls or maybe they were portraits of the ideal female figure during this time. There's also a theory that this might be depicting an early mother goddess or a deity of childbearing. So these little figures are amazing just by what they represent, and we may never really know. So that's everything I wanted to say about the Paleolithic era. Thanks for joining me during my first little video, and hopefully we'll see you during the next one. Goodbye!